What's up guys, Overdov here, and today we're going to be talking about DeFi opportunities on Sui network. As usual, all links going to be in description, but follow them at your own risk, and nothing here is financial advice. Always do your own research. So right now the DeFi sector on Sui network is pretty heavily incentivized, meaning a lot of pools, farms, they have like a boosted APRs. They basically pay you additional incentives in the form of Sui tokens. Today we're going to be taking a look at two type of protocols. The first one is lending and borrowing protocol, and the second one is DEX. Of course, if you're holding Sui token, you're bullish on Sui, maybe you're just staking that with a regular staking on chain with a validator, but that pays very little. Has like 3.5 to 4% APR, and that's just not enough compared to all of the other options. Technically, there is one potential upside in the case of regular staking. That's if some of the protocols decide to airdrop to the stakers of the token. That's not unprecedented. Lately, we've seen some protocols do that, but that would be basically the only hope to catch up with the yield of DeFi instruments that are currently present on chain. So we're not going to be talking about regular staking, we're going to be talking about liquid staking and also using your Sui tokens or your stables or your liquid staking tokens inside DeFi protocols. And before the actual protocols, let's get the liquid staking concept out of the way in case you are not familiar with that one. Basically what it does, you staking not to a validator, but to a protocol. You're getting your regular yield as you would get by staking to a validator, but you get a liquid staking token in return. There are currently three main liquid staking protocols on Sui. That's Volo, it's been recently acquired by Navi protocol, that's Aftermath, and that's Hadel. So let me show real quick how it works. I already have Volo and Aftermath, so we're going to be using Hadel in this case. So I got 315 Sui currently sitting in my wallet. I'll just do 150 for Hadel. Okay, staked, and we received some HA Sui. One thing that you have to be aware of liquid staking is that the exchange rate between the actual token and the liquid staking token is not always one-to-one. It's not always pegged, because there are certain times where you can see more demand towards liquid staking token, for example, or vice versa. But usually it's either pegged or close to a peg. That's all what liquid staking allows you to do. As you can see, we're getting our yield from actually staking this Sui, but we also have tokens that we can use inside the DeFi ecosystem. That's the whole point of liquid staking. Okay, now let's go over the protocols themselves. For borrowing and lending protocols, we have Navi protocol and we got Scallop. Here, if you supply assets, some of the pools are incentivized. It's better to show, I guess, on the Scallop example, because here it has a description that Scallop incentivized program aims to reward lenders and borrowers, offers extra limited Sui tokens during the reward period. So TLDR is, like every epoch, every protocol has the pool of Sui tokens allocated to additionally incentivize different pools and farms inside their protocol. So if we check the APIs of Sui, for example, you can see that the API currently in Scallop shows 17.4%, and the API on stables currently you can see close to 22% on USDC and 23% on USDT. Roughly the same APYs you can see on Navi. I actually recommend using Scallop over Navi for one simple reason. Navi already rolled out token and Scallop hasn't yet, so there is a possibility for the airdrop there. There is actually the page of the Scallop airdrop. This is a bit confusing, honestly. I haven't dived deep into that stuff. But basically you can get even more incentives for lending and borrowing on the platform. But for this video, we're only talking about additional incentives in the form of Sui. So on Scallop, there are two possibilities on how you can potentially approach that. Possibility number one, you just simply supply collateral, like for example, you supply, if I supply my Sui here, there is also, you need to stake in the pool because the pool is incentivized. So when you supply the asset, make sure that this checkbox is on. And basically, you're done. Once you supply this asset, you're already enjoying some additional yield in the form of Sui tokens. As you can see, there are also the possibility to provide liquid staking tokens here. We have HA Sui, V Sui, and AF Sui. However, the boosted APYs on that are not that high. And I actually recommend using them inside the DEXes. So if you want to use scallop, I recommend mostly providing either Sui, USDC, or USDT. So that's playing on the side of lending. There is also a possibility to play on the side of borrowing. You will still have to lend, obviously, as a collateral. So if you're familiar with like looping strategies on lending and borrowing, and if you're not familiar, I will show it in the next video. Here we're not going to dive into that. But going back to the topic, as you can see, borrowing is also incentivized. So when you borrow tokens, you're actually getting paid. So as you can see, you have borrow API that you need to pay, but on top you're having rewards in the form of Sui. However, the problem is that in lending, if you're depositing in these incentivized pools, these assets, they not count as collateral for borrowing. So for borrowing, you have to deposit separately, and then you can borrow. So your main upside in this case obviously comes from looping. So that's lending and borrowing. Now let's take a look at DEXes. Here we got 4 apps: Cetus, Turbos, Aftermath, and FlowX. Pool selection also DeFi, but basically we can separate it in 3 types of pools. First type is gonna be stables. It's gonna be USDC, USDT. Like if we take a look at Cetus, if you don't like Sui, if you don't want to hold any Sui, you just want stables, you can play within this pool, USDT, USDC. If you hover here, you can see that the majority of the APRs coming from Sui, a little bit from Cetus tokens. Fees are basically play 0 roles here. Let's see what we have on other DEXes regarding stable pools. Aftermath doesn't have stable pool. FlowX has the pool. The APR shows 33.55, and on Turbos it shows the biggest APRs of 55%. So in this case I would obviously pick the Turbos. Again, the fluctuations in the APRs are mostly due to the differences in TVL compared to the pool of Sui allocated for the incentives. Okay, so that's stables. Then we got probably the most used pool everywhere, that's Sui USDC. Obviously, for Sui USDC, for that pool, APR is going to be a lot higher, but keep in mind the impermanent loss possibility. So Turbos shows us 130% APR. If you hover over that, you can see that only half of that are incentives, and actually half of that are fees, coming from fees. Because people swap Sui and USDC a lot. On FlowX shows a lot less. As you can see, fee percentage here is a lot smaller compared to rewards. And then we got Cetus. For Cetus, we got 167. That also shows 90% in fees, 67 in Sui, and 10% in Cetus. So on paper, for Sui USDC, Cetus is going to be the most lucrative currently. Okay, and the last type of pools, that's liquid staking pools that are on paper also stable because they should remain somewhat pegged to Sui. As I previously mentioned, we got 3 tokens here: HA Sui, V Sui, and AF Sui. So regarding APRs in this pool, it's gonna largely be driven by incentives because fees in these pairs are usually not high, as again, these are pretty much stable pairs. So on Cetus, we got range of around 23 to 25. Turbos, I only see HA Sui pool with almost 34% APR shown. Okay, for Sui pool, it shows crazy APR here, but it's not from incentives, it's from fees. Because they have very low liquidity here of 25k and 24-hour volume was 20k. Obviously you can't rely on that long term, but short term you can take advantage of that as well. AF Sui also not incentivized and pretty much dead pool. on turbos. FlowX, they got also Sui pool, and none of the other liquid staking protocols. As you can see, Sui is more representative on all of the DEXes, so currently shows 36% APR. And on Aftermath, we only have the pool with their native liquid staking, Sui. Here the APR is a bit lower. A quick addition from the future: when making the video, I initially totally forgot Kriya DEX. They also have incentivized pools. We got a couple of stable pools. Obviously, we got USDC Sui, although on USDC Sui API doesn't look that great. However, the stable pools look very lucrative. USDT shows almost 37% APY. And also, if you use Volo Sui as a liquid staking token, they have a nice Sui pool with a projected 40% APY. So these definitely look good. And back to the video. In different protocols, depending on pools, depending on farms, it can work a little bit differently in terms of like composition of your assets. Like for example, since we got Sui previously, I wanna stake it into a Sui farm or pool somewhere. Now, if we go to FlowX, if you click on this farm, so obviously we need to get LP first, because the farm itself is incentivized. And here, for example, you can choose on how you provide your assets. And by default, it's going to be like 50-50. Then you just supply and you can stake this LP into a farm. Now, if you go to turbos, for example, you can see that it's not the farm effectively, it's just the pool that is already incentivized. However, here, as you can see, deposit composition is different. So 75% of this pool is Sui and 25% is Sui. So just before you do any swaps, make sure you first research on deposit composition of all the pools, all the farms, and just plan on how you're gonna add liquidity there. That's all I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you very much for watching. If I forgot something or you have any questions, suggestions, leave them down in the comment section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow, where we're going to be taking a look at the incentivized protocol on Aptos, and also taking a look at how looping strategy works.